So, yesterday I talked about parables and telling your story. And I wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit, just give you a little more detail around just some thoughts I had this morning about, your story in general. And the parables that Jesus taught, he spoke to the general public in parables. And those parables were intended to share really mysteries and important deep messages in ways that the general audiences could understand. And I just really broke that down to story, right? We all need to learn how to tell not even just our own story, but to tell a story in a way that's compelling, that connects with people. Remember, I talked about that yesterday. So let me see my notes. Just really simplifying complex ideas, connecting with people, and then earning their attention. And so when we talk about the V.I.V.I.D model, vision, identity, voice, information, and development, we're on voice. Voice, we want to find our voice and to define our core message. That's the ultimate goal. And so I'm presenting that defining your core message is about telling your story in a way that different audiences, the ones you're speaking to at the time, in a way that they can understand and in a way that draws them in. And so I was really thinking about the fact that there are so many different ways to tell a story. So you might be telling your story in terms of history, poetry, prophecy, and in parables as a general category, and so let me go back. So those four, in terms of history, you might be talking about biographies. Like my father loves to read biographies, just to learn people's stories. And so you can share your own, and you can share the stories of others. You may be someone who, just like my father, who, never gets tired of a good biography and loves sharing really great details about people that whose names we may or may not even know, but just sharing the individual stories. And then also, from a historical standpoint, talking about events. It's really good for us, just as human beings, to understand history, understand where we came from. That's a really good source of even information about our own identities. So identity is the second step in the V.I.V.I.D model. But you could be telling stories in the context of history, in biographies or events. Then you could also be sharing poetry. So even when you think about the scriptures, there's so many poetic books in the Bible. There are songs. And so poetry and songs are really important forms of storytelling because they can speak to people in ways that other stories or other content may not. And so you might say, well, I'm not a writer per se, but you could be poetic. Rappers, they are poets, at their core. Songwriters, they are poets at their core. So that may be how you share your message, and just lean into that if that's you, right? There's no rules ultimately, because it's so important for you to define the way you were born to communicate, because we need your voice more than anything. And then prophecy. So you may feel like you may have a prophetic gift. You may be a seer who can see into the future, but just from a practical standpoint, there are people who are futurists who can look into the future, and they share trends with us. And so your message may be around coming events. It doesn't have to be some ominous deep thing, but it could be just forecasting. That may be your natural way of telling stories. And then just sharing insights. And then parables ultimately are It's really how you use narrative as a tool. You can use narrative as a way to teach people. That's what a parable is at its core. So more than anything, what I want to encourage you to do is identify your unique style of storytelling and lean into it. Practice it, share it every opportunity you get. And like I mentioned last night, learn how to share that story, that core message that you have, in a way that's appropriate to different audiences. So no matter where you go, the core is the same, but all you're doing is communicating that core message in a way that audiences can understand based on where they are. And that's how that's going to be one of the main methods for how you will share your core message. And that message then can be translated into every possible format, into a book, or a series of books, into a training program, into an online course, into social media posts, into email campaigns, into blog posts, into stage plays, into, like, there's so many different ways to do it, but the core message is the it remains the same, but you can interpret it in multiple ways, and that's how you find your voice.